Hey, what's up, guys? Here on the Fire Sports Pod. I'm your host, Zach Jackson. I got my special guest on, my professor from Montclair. He's just going to introduce himself and what he does in the field of sports. So, Professor, I'll let you take it from there.
My name is Gordon Damer. I am currently an overnight host for ESPN Radio here in New York, 98.7 FM. I've been working in sports broadcasting for, more than half of my life. So I've been doing this for a while, and now I'm an adjunct professor at Montclair State. And Zach was one of my students not too long ago. So that is my up-to-date resume.
Cool. All right. So, Professor, I'm going to just pick your brain a little bit.
Sure.
We got the Super Bowl coming up. What a game it's going to be. A lot of people were kind of really not so crazy about the Super Bowl because it's like similar to what Tom Brady was. Like, you keep seeing Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, at least in the AFC Championship. So what are your thoughts on like the Super Bowl and all this Taylor Swift stuff like that around the league? But all in all, like, who's has the better shot of winning the Super Bowl? What are your picks for the Super Bowl?
Well, look, even though they're two really good teams, it's not the most sizzle-worthy matchup, right? Like, we've kind of seen the Chiefs a lot. We've kind of seen the Niners a lot. So it's not when we got into conference championship weekend and you thought the possibility of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens getting back, or certainly the Lions with their story, them getting to a Super Bowl, I think it would have had more sizzle factor. But look, it'll be a good game. I'm interested to see how it goes. You know, for me, it's very hard, as someone who likes to put a little money down on games, it's very hard for me to bet against the Chiefs. Anytime I always bet against Patrick Mahomes, I come to regret it. So, you know, when you look at this game, you know, Mahomes is quickly, I said this on the show the other night, for sports fans like you who are not old enough to have seen Michael Jordan in his prime and don't really know what it was like living through that time, the word that would come to mind was it was inevitable. Like when Jordan was in the playoffs, it was inevitable the Bulls were going to win that series. It was inevitable they were going to win another championship. And not that I would say it's inevitable right now, but it's you're starting to get a little sense of that with the Chiefs. When Patrick Mahomes is involved, it feels kind of inevitable. And he's one of those guys and one of those teams that you got to kill him dead. If you just kill them a little bit, they're going to come back and haunt you. If you leave it open a little bit, if you make mistakes a little bit, they're going to come back and haunt you. So, you know, I think that it seems like most of the public is on the Chiefs here. Even though they are the underdogs on the betting line, but it's not to me, even though they're two really good teams, it's not a matchup that I can't wait to see these two teams go at it.
All right, yeah, I kind of agree with it a little bit. I love Patrick Mahomes. I think he's by far, other than me being a Cowboys fan, he's by far my favorite player. I just think the way he gives himself, or the way he presents himself to like the public and the way he goes about certain things is just, to me, is a little bit different than what other players do. He's not like a showboater. He kind of does what he has to do. He's a leader, which is great. But yeah, I'm not so crazy about the matchup as well. I would have probably rathered a different matchup, like maybe the Lions and Patrick. I picked Patrick Mahomes to beat the Ravens. I picked them to cover the spread. And I also picked the Lions to cover the spread, but they lost and they were up so big. So a little thing, what's your thoughts on the Lions particularly? Do you think they have a shot of coming back the same way they did this year? Or was this year just like kind of like a fluke, I should say?
Well, I mean, I think they're a team that's on the rise. They've done a really good job in the draft here the last couple of years. If Goff is the solution at quarterback, which he looks like he is, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be in the mix. You know, that's the problem with when you lose. You know, John Madden once had a great line. It's not the pain of losing that game. It's the realization of all the work, all the things that have to go right for you just to get back to that same stage of the next year. So as we sit here on February, whatever this is, February 7th, I would say, yeah, of course. I would expect that the Lions are going to get back next year and they'll have another opportunity. But who knows? Maybe next year's the year that Goff gets hurt. Maybe next year's the year their offensive line deals with injuries. Maybe things don't go right. Maybe another team in there, you know, maybe the Packers are better next year and kind of knock them off of the division. Who knows? If there's a reason why we love sports. It's because there's so much things that can kind of go into it. It's not really scripted, all that. So it's kind of like a reality show.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Sorry about the dog in the background.
It's okay.
Got some dogs in here, but no,
Gotcha.
I really do agree with the Lions though. Like the Lions per se, they are like, I like them a lot. They almost took down my Cowboys as well. In that I believe it was week 16. I'm not so sure, but I believe it was week 16 where they just barely lost, and it was just do you think Dan Campbell's what is it?
Decision to go for it?
Yeah, decision making just in general to just like push the envelope and like try to like kind of put the other teams on their backs. Do you think that's playoff type winning playoff games? Like, can he do that to win a Super Bowl, or do you think that's just going to bite him in the behind like it's been this year? Do you think he'll have more success in that next year, or will he have to change his ways? Because I don't know, like especially against the Cowboys, I thought that was kind of dumb. I kind of called it. All my family was saying that they were going to kick the field goal, but I said they were definitely going for it if they got down there for a chance to win. And then that kind of plagued them in the 49ers game, bearing the fact that both of the wide receivers had catchable balls and they just didn't catch the ball. Do you think that that's going to haunt him as a coach in his years to come?
I don't think so. I mean, I know that he got a lot of criticism for the decisions in the NFC Championship game, but I mean, at the end of the day, you got to tell he has built his brand on, I am going to believe my players are going to execute. I'm going to put the faith in my players. I'm not going to put it in a kicker who has a sketchy record. I'm not going to put it in things that aren't really relying on my team. He's built his brand on that. Him going for it, being aggressive, trusting in his players. And I would think that if you go against that in the biggest game that you've played, that's kind of saying that you don't really believe this. So what you're at, the essence of who you are as a coach, when it really gets down to brass tacks, you're going to go against it. You're going to betray all the things that you say. You've talked a good game, but when it's really time to put it on the line, you're not going to put it on the line, and you are going to go back on what you said. So to me, it wasn't surprising that he decided to go for it. At the end of the day, they didn't execute. If they execute those plays, it's a completely different conversation. It feels like a lot of the criticism is just based on the results. There was one, I can't remember now, thinking back. There was one in the second half that I thought, yeah, go for it. And there was, I think it was the 48-yard field goal. I thought, yeah, go for it there. I think there was a 43-yard field goal. I would have just taken the points at that point. But, you know, we only think that, well, just take the points, as if the field goal kicker is absolutely going to kick the field goal. All these different things could play out differently. So, I mean, he's built his brand on being aggressive, going for it in the moment, and trusting his players. And that's what he did. And to me, the coach that really kind of deserved more of the criticism from the conference championship games was John Harbaugh. His team did not play the way. They did not live up to what they were the regular season. They kind of went against it. They started throwing the ball all over the place. They ran the ball, like 6 or 7 times?
Yeah.
With the backs, and you have the number one. It was almost like they were trying to prove a point.
They did not like a running football game.
Yeah, they went against what they were built on. And to me, that's far more a damning statement, not going with what got you there rather than what Dan Campbell did.
I do agree with that. That was actually my next question, actually. So you kind of answered my next question with the Baltimore Ravens. But do you think, like, the way that Baltimore kind of changed their thing, Dallas did the same thing. I don't know if you noticed that. You probably did. I didn't realize that during the game. Well, during the game, I was realizing that they kept saying that Dan Quinn tried to change the defense, where instead of us, we're a man defense. We love playing man, and that's really what got us there, all the turnovers and whatever. That's also why we get burned sometimes, like Bland gets burned, because we're playing man against like DK, all these big wide receivers. So we were playing man the whole season, and for Green Bay, Jordan Love, which is a rookie quarterback in his first legitimate season with the Packers as starting quarterback and his first playoff game in Dallas, why would we switch to zone where presumably he's actually really good against zone and he's terrible against man? But it was like kind of similar to Baltimore. They went away from what they were accustomed, what they basically got them to that point, and they tried to do something different. So do you think that like sometimes coaches overthink and try to do something different instead of just sticking with the game plan, which I don't understand why both Baltimore didn't run the ball, like you said, only like 6-7 times, and what Lamar Jackson was great for was able to extend plays, run out of the pocket, and he was just like sitting in there. He was like similar to like what Tom Brady would do, just sit in the pocket. But there's a difference between Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady. The accuracy is totally different. The speed of the ball that it comes out is ridiculously different. And he's known for extending plays, Lamar. So it's similar to what Dallas did with the defense. And now Dan Quinn's not the defensive coordinator. He's with the Commanders now. So do you think that coaches should just stick with the game plan instead of trying to do all these analytics and look for different things to try to like change what they do in order to like succeed in that game? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's the question, right? Do you just stick to what your strengths are, or do you game plan towards the weaknesses of what the other team is? I think it kind of depends on the situation. But at least in terms of to me, it wasn't a game plan thing with Dallas. It seemed like they were just the effort just was not. They came out completely flat, and I don't know why that was. They were flat on offense. They were flat on defense. They gave you absolutely nothing on either side of the ball. So maybe it was a game plan thing. Maybe it was, but if you're a coach and you're installing a game plan and you can see right away it ain't working, well, you've got to switch it up in the moment. And that's a sign that it probably wasn't a very good game plan when you come out Dallas just looked completely inept. I mean,
yeah,
for a weekend where a lot of, that weekend teams get exposed. That first playoff weekend is about separating the teams that made the playoffs from the teams that belong in the playoffs. And I don't think, even as a Dolphin fan, and as poorly as they played against Kansas City, I don't think any team had a worse weekend that weekend than Dallas.
Without a doubt. I do agree with the Dolphins. I just think that the Dolphins were not accustomed to that weather. I think that weather was ridiculous.
They're just not. Here's the thing. 7 teams in each conference make the playoffs every year. That doesn't necessarily mean that 7 teams deserve to make the playoffs every single year. Dolphins took advantage of a very weak schedule, didn't really beat any good teams outside of your Cowboys. Didn't measure up well against the good teams, the Ravens, some of the other ones, the Bills
Chiefs.
Twice, the Chiefs. So they were kind of a product of their schedule. They were a pretender, and their quarterback, if everything is going great, he's good. But if you're able to knock the receivers off their route, or you're able to get a little bit of pressure, you can see the warts. So they're not really a contending team, even though their record would tell you that they were.
And their roster also says a difference. Like, their roster is not bad. I just think the defense is not even that bad either. I just think, for me, it just didn't look like you said, they had a easy schedule that they were running through, and they didn't really beat enough teams until our Dallas Cowboys. But do you think Tua is like, since you're a Dolphins fan, so you know a lot more about like the Tua situation, do you think Tua is just like a little like scared to extend plays? Because dude, he had one run, I think, of 6 yards, which was the longest run of the season. Do you think he's like mentally scared a little bit of what happened the previous year, or how many concussions he had, and whatever the case is? Could that lie into a factor of why he doesn't like extending plays and he just throws it away? Because we're not talking about Tom Brady that really can't run. Tua can run. We saw it in college. Like, he was able to run, extend plays. Why isn't he doing that this year? Do you have like any insight of what you think?
I mean, the main thing for him, think back to this time last year, there was a lot of conversation that, maybe Tua should retire because of all the concussions. Maybe he shouldn't be playing football. I think he's a tough guy. I don't like using the word scared because it has a real negative connotation,
Yeah.
But I think that there is a concern. And I think it was a coaching philosophy of, hey, let's make sure that you are not taking unnecessary risks. And he might have been able to run in college. He's not a dynamic athlete. He's not a guy that really can make plays out of the pocket. And I think that their fear for him and the entire game plan, get rid of the ball quickly, get it out of his hands fast, put it into the receiver's hands. Last offseason, he took time to train to learn how to fall to kind of prevent concussions. So, yeah, I think that they were leery of him making plays with his legs because of his injury history. He has a pretty extensive injury history. This is the first year in the pros that he did not miss time because of injury. So, and that goes back to college with the catastrophic hip injury that he suffered. So I do think that there is a concern of, hey, we don't want to put him in harm's way because we know what could happen.
Gotcha. All right, yeah. So we're gonna one more thing, and then we'll move off the football talk, and we'll go into like maybe some basketball talk. But the last one, the Steelers. I have to ask, like they're the Steelers in the AFC, so I really don't care about them. But as a Cowboys fan, we've had some battles in the Super Bowl. So Mike Tomlin, what is your take on Mike Tomlin? Because he hasn't had a losing season, but they haven't been, I believe, past the first or second round in a long time. So, do you think that there should be a change at head coaching, or like what's the deal with the Steelers? Because they can get to the playoffs, but they really don't do nothing after that. Like after the first round, because they're really only first round wild card. They're really never ahead of the division lately. So, what is your take on just the Steelers and Mike Tomlin? And should they move off to try to change the narrative, maybe change a different perspective? Because Bill Belichick's out there, Mike Vrabel's out there, Ron Rivera's out there. Now Mike Zimmer might even come as the Dallas DC, or Rex Ryan might come out of retirement supposedly from the analyst spot to come as a Cowboys DC. There's some viable options out there for the Steelers. Do you think that it's time to maybe move off Mike Tomlin? What is your take on that?
I mean, the problem for Tomlin has been he just hasn't had a quarterback. They've taken some shots. Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett. They tried Trubisky as a backup. They haven't. I think that what Mike Tomlin has done, like to me, the question is when you have the talent, can you get the talent to fire? Now, I'm not telling you that Mike Tomlin is the greatest head coach, that he would be my first or second choice if I had all the coaches available to me. But the guy always is able to get the most out of the talent that he has. I just think that right now they just don't have a whole lot of talent. Offensively, this is an offensive league, and I don't think that he's had the talent at the most important position in sports, which is a quarterback. Now, I don't know what they're going to do this offseason, if they're going to stick with Pickett, if they're going to look for other options in the draft. But I think until you get that square, when Big Ben was back there, we weren't having these conversations because he had a quarterback.
No. Yeah.
But they've kind of taken some shots here trying to fix that and fix their offensive line, fix the offense in general. I think the one thing that they're really missing is the quarterback. I think they got some good skill position players on offense. I think the offensive line is better than what it was. Probably could still use a little tweak. Like every team could use a little tweak along the offensive line, but I just don't think that they've had the quarterback.
So you don't think Kenny Pickett is the answer for the Steelers? Because he's a Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that makes me jump off the page and say, wow, that guy's going to be really good. And a lot of times you see guys, and yes, are there examples of guys who at one point early on, they really struggle, and then over time they kind of get into the groove? Yeah, but nothing from Kenny Pickett would make me say, hey, he's definitely the long-term answer. And if you don't have the long-term answer at that position, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. All right. So, guys,
look, here's the thing: if Tomlin were to get fired by the Steelers, he'd be out of work for 10 minutes. There's 1,000 teams that would line up to sign the Jets. I mean, you kidding me? Oh, you're over 500 the Jets would sign. I mean, I don't know if he'd want to go to the Jets, but there would be plenty of teams that would be lining up for Mike Tomlin.
And to be honest, he's kind of a little bit like, with the age of Ben Roethlisberger he was still able to consistently get them to the playoffs. Right. That would actually probably work well with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers could maybe extend his career. But we'll see, because he got hurt the first 4 snaps of the first game of the season this year. So we'll see how he is with next year. But yeah, so we're going to move off the NFL, guys. We're going to be moving on to some NBA and maybe some college basketball. So, Professor, what is your take on so as you know, in my class, I've always worn my Lakers stuff and whatever. I have a question, because you're the professional here. So what is your take on the Lakers? What could they do? Because I've been watching ESPN, First Take, all this stuff, and I've been trying to figure out, and I'm searching my thing. I can't figure out a trade that can maybe help the Lakers. I mean, consistently, the last 3 games, we've been playing really good basketball. We beat the Boston in Boston with no LeBron or AD. Went to the Garden in New York, beat the Knicks, and then we played the Hornets just last night, and we beat them. So, not last night, 2 nights ago, and we beat them. So what is your take on the Lakers? Could they make a trade to maybe, because LeBron is kind of forcing his way to try to make a trade, as he wore a Knicks sting and he said exactly what he was trying to do, blah, 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 blah. So we know LeBron's not moving anywhere this year. Who knows about next year with Bronny coming in, if he does. What is your take on the Lakers, and what could they do to help out the roster to maybe get LeBron at least into the playoffs?
Well, I mean, I think that what the Lakers have shown this year is that they can beat anybody on a given night, and they can lose anybody on a given night. And I think that that's kind of the product of the two stars that they've kind of built themselves around at this point. You know, when superstars hit that age, it's the type of thing where they don't lose it all. Generally, they don't lose it all of a sudden, but the moments of greatness, it's a little bit more sporadic, right? Like one night they're great, maybe the next. So I think that you're starting to see that a little bit with LeBron. He's not as great as he used to be. He's still really, really good. He's still one of the best players. But without him being great on a night in, night out basis, the best player in the sport, with the roster that they've kind of put together and the unreliability of Anthony Davis, I think they're kind of in a tough spot. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to do whatever LeBron tells them to do. Let's be honest. He's the GM of the team. And he's about right now. I mean, he's the old line that Michael Kay uses all the time. He's not buying any green bananas in terms of his career, right? He's not going to be patient. He doesn't care what happens 3 years from now from the Lakers. He wants to win now because he realizes there's a very good chance that he's won his final championship in the NBA, and certainly so if he sticks with the Lakers. So they're going to look for, I'm sure, another big piece to kind of go with the two pieces that they have already in Davis and LeBron. I just don't know what's appealing that the Lakers have. I don't know what their draft pick situation. I know they've moved some draft picks here over the last couple of years. I don't know what draft picks they still have remaining. I don't know on their roster what's appealing to other teams outside of the two pieces that they don't want to get rid of in Anthony. What's really kind of holding them back is that Anthony Davis just isn't that reliable.
Yeah, until this year. I mean, he's only missed 3 games and he's averaging like 25.
You always know that that's right around the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like if he's played 10 games in a row, that's a good sign he's going to be missing some pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. No, I definitely agree with that because we've been dealing with that since the bubble of 2020. The only thing I was looking at was they have a 2028 or 2029 unprotected pick. They said that they want to hold on to that because they don't know what it is about. But they said they will give it up, but if it has to be for like something ridiculously reliable. The only other guy would be Austin Reeves, and LeBron loves him, and I don't think they're going to move off him.
Right.
And then D'Lo is playing out of his mind. I mean, the last month and a couple days, 7 days into February, he's been averaging almost 30 a game, and with now he's averaging almost 10 assists. So I don't know where you could, like you said, where to go. I mean, DeJounte Murray's out there, but his defense has been terrible this year, and he's supposed to be that two-way guard where he can play defense and score the bucket. But you're seeing that with Trae Young, he doesn't really pan that good with another star. So he needs the ball in his hand, and he's not a spot-up shooter. So it's not like a Buddy Hield where you could just chuck him in the corner. And we should have made that trade 2 years ago when we could have got Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, and I believe it was Brogdon. But we didn't want to make that trade. And now we're kind of kicking ourselves because if we had Buddy Hield, Brogdon, and Miles Turner, you can give a rest to Anthony Davis because you have another center, you have a shooter, and you have a point guard that can shoot the ball and get the offense going so LeBron doesn't have to take the load. But there's nothing really out there. Zach LaVine's out for the season now with a foot surgery.
He's not the answer. I mean, the problem is there are not that many answers out there. It doesn't seem like there's going to be many game changers that change teams at the trade deadline. Now, who knows? Maybe that will sometimes when it's the most quiet beforehand, that's the year that they have the most deals. But at least as things look right now, as we're sitting here a couple of days before the trade deadline, it doesn't look like there's that many difference makers.
Exactly.
And if there are difference makers that are available, the Lakers don't really have the best package to put together.
Yeah.
Right? If you're the Hawks and you're going to move DeJounte Murray, you're telling me that a 2029 unprotected one from the Lakers and maybe a piece here or there is going to all of a sudden get you to push the button of yes on a deal. I don't know. I think Murray's defense, I know it's been bad in Atlanta, but he was a good defensive player in San Antonio. So I would think that maybe it's just the situation that he's in.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying he was a bad defensive player. Just this year alone with the Hawks, he's been pretty bad defensively. But no, with the Spurs, he was ridiculous. But that's also the coach. Greg Popovich is one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in the NBA still. And over time. So I do believe that had to deal with the stuff he's prior on defense and making everything consistent and work well. That's why I think the Spurs in the long run, if he stays the coach, is going to be good with Victor Wembanyama and everybody that's there. They have a young team. But yeah, I don't know what the Lakers, I was just seeing what your thoughts, because there's really nothing out there that's appealing and there's nothing we can give that's appealing enough for the other team.
Like they've kind of lived on this edge here the last couple of years of kind of going all in for LeBron. And when you have those assets and you deal them away, you can only do it once, right? Like, so all those moves that they've already made, they're stuck with the ramifications of.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you have I remember from class, you have a favorite team. I believe it's the Knicks, right?
Yeah, I'm a Knicks fan, yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about your Knicks. I mean, the Knicks themselves, they are, I believe they're third in the West now. Because
East, yeah.
Yeah, third in the East.
I don't know what happened last night. I didn't check it today. I've been more
The Knicks did win last night, so they did beat Memphis.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I've been more focused on the Brunson injury and seeing if there's any of this. At least as of right now, I haven't seen anything on his ankle injury, and that's really the major concern. Rather than if they can crack, it doesn't matter if they're 3 or 2. I prefer to stay out of 4 because you want to avoid the Celtics in that second round. And it feels like right now there's some weakness with the top teams outside of the Celtics. Between the Bucks and their issues on the defensive side and their record even now with Doc Rivers coming on board. The Sixers, their injuries obviously are a major problem with Embiid. So it feels like there's an opening now for the Knicks if they could ever get healthy. But if Brunson is out for a significant period of time, that is a major blow because he is the guy that makes that whole thing work.
Yeah, I saw the ankle injury. He kind of walked up and he was arguing with the ref. It didn't seem too bad, but he didn't return to the game. So I don't know if that was a precaution or whatever. I was covering that last night with the game on the TikTok on the Fire Sports Pod. So I was covering that a little bit, and a lot of people were saying it wasn't as bad. But I'm like, okay, if it wasn't as bad, then why didn't he just come back in the game? Because I've seen.
Well, I think you suffer that kind of injury, they're gonna, especially when you're that important of a player. They're going to make sure they get it all checked out and everything else. So he was able to walk off the court in his own power. He wasn't on crutches after the game, so that's all good. He wasn't wearing a boot or anything like that. So hopefully it's not a long-term thing. But, they had some other one, like the OG Anunoby elbow thing. Like the first time he missed the game, it was like, oh, he's just going to miss a game. And now I think he's missed 5 games in a row. So you don't want it to be something that can linger, especially when it's an important player like Brunson.
Yeah, and then Randall's out as well. So you guys got like your 3 big stars are out right now.
And Grimes has been missing time.
Yeah.
And Mitchell Robinson from the beginning of the season. They've just dealt with a lot of injuries.
And I'm surprised that they're still
still hanging out. Look, if they can get by, I think they can get by without Randall for a while. I think they can get by without OG for a while. But if Brunson were to miss time, that's he's the guy with the ball in his hand. He's the guy that runs the offense. And really, as you go to the trade deadline, the thing that the Knicks kind of are looking or should be looking for, and I think they are, is that secondary unit. They need somebody that's able to kind of come in, handle the ball, and kind of run that unit and run the offense for that second unit. It's not Deuce McBride. It's not Grimes. So if that's what they need, even when Brunson's healthy, if Brunson were to be out, well, then they really need it because they don't have that backup.
What about Dante DiVincenzo? Because he's been great for you guys, especially last night with Brunson out. He hit like a dagger 3 at the end, which really put you guys over the top to win that game against Memphis. Do I question with just injury wise? So there's been the new rule that they've been placed this year with the 65 game rule, and then if you go below that, you can't be awarded. So for example, Joel Embiid's out of that. I believe it's who are the other guys that are out of it? There's a couple of them that are injured right now that are out of it. But just for example, Joel Embiid is like the bigger name because he probably was going to run up 2-time MVP again because he was playing out of his mind. And now he's got a meniscus tear, so he's going to be out for a while. If not, hopefully come back for the playoffs. But what's your take on the rule? Because a lot of players I've been seeing, and some players shouldn't be talking because they've been missing time, and sometimes in the beginning, before the rule, it was always load management. So some players shouldn't really be talking so much. But Tyrese Halliburton's talking, Joel Embiid's talking, even Draymond is saying stuff, even though of his history of missing games because of on the court issues of doing some crazy stuff. But do you like the rule for the load management? I do, but I also don't like when it's because of people getting actually injured. It's not like he tore his meniscus on purpose. So, what is your take on that rule? Because it's kind of it's neck and neck on different types of ways you can put it. And understand it a little bit. So what is your take on that? What you could tell to the people that are watching, like what's really that rule and why is it in place just for the 65 games? And maybe if you actually have a legitimate injury, then it should not be, like something like that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, there shouldn't need to be a rule, right? Like if there's 82 games in a season and you're missing 17 games, I mean, that's a significant period of time. So there shouldn't need to be. If you're only playing in 65 games, it's almost impossible with how competitive the NBA is that you could be the most valuable player if some other guy is playing 75 games. Availability is key. So there shouldn't need to be a rule. I hear what you're saying, that you don't want guys to play through injuries and then suffer a greater injury. There's more important things than postseason awards. So, and especially of all people, Joel Embiid, you already got your MVP. You don't, a second one is not going to all of a sudden solidify you as a greater player. You know what will solidify you as a greater player? Getting out of the second round of the playoffs. Even before he suffered this injury, to me, he should have foregone the 65 games. He should have not been that should never be a focus, especially not when you already have an MVP. You won an MVP last year. And how did that help you when it came? The NBA is about winning. NBA is the league where superstars win. So if you're a superstar, if you're Joel Embiid and you're the reigning MVP, to be out of the playoffs every year before the conference finals, that's far more damning. So for me, I don't have a problem with the rule. It shouldn't be necessary. The voters should know if this guy has only played 64 games. He can't possibly be as valuable as a guy who's there night in and night out. That's not to blame the guy who maybe suffered an injury. I'm not putting it on them that way. But if you're not there, you're not there. So I don't think that they should need a rule, but clearly they did need a rule, and I don't have a problem with the rule.
Cool, and for some reason that rule actually has galvanized Kawhi. I mean, Kawhi is now in the front, one of the front runners for MVP. I think it's Luka, Kawhi, Shea. And I believe those, and then maybe Tatum, but Tatum's kind of regressed since the beginning of the season. Anthony Edwards is up there. Jokic. Yeah, that was the last guy, Jokic. But do you, like Kawhi's emergence of actually playing now, do you think that rule has something to do with it? Because, I mean, now it's like he's like really playing. Like I haven't seen Kawhi like this since the injury when he had it against Golden State with the Spurs, where Zaza Pachulia put his foot underneath, and that's what they made that rule where you can't go underneath the shooter. I haven't seen him this consistent since then, and that was when they probably would have knocked Golden State out of the playoffs that season, thing, because they were up by like 30 to go up 2-0 in Golden State. So, do you think that rule kind of helps out Kawhi because it kind of tells him like, yo, no matter what. He's going for a championship, of course, but he can't. If he misses too much time or whatever, he's not like in I don't know, like game shape, because every time they make to the playoffs, it doesn't seem like he's ready, because every time he's there, he kind of gets injured again. So do you think that rule kind of helps him out a little bit for his sake? Because like now people kind of like, a lot of people don't respect him enough. I respect him as a player. I just didn't like all the load management crap that he used to do. But now he's consistently playing. I can't really say anything because he's playing legitimate basketball, and the Clippers are one of the best, if not the best, on-fire teams in the league since they got James Harden back in December. Or since they went on a run since December 1st.
Well, I mean, look, if that's there's no way of knowing that.
Yeah, of course. I was just seeing like
now, but if that's true, if he's playing more now because he's focused on some regular season award, that's kind of an indictment of who he is as a person. I think it's probably just a coincidence. And again, given his history, the fact that he's played all these games there's probably a good chance that he's going to be missing here sometime soon. But I can't be in his mind to know for sure. But if that is true, if that's the reason why he's playing more consistently now, that's kind of an indictment of who he is as a person.
Okay. Now to move on just to the last segment in the last couple minutes, we'll just do some college basketball.
Okay.
The college basketball world has been ridiculously crazy this year. The top teams have been losing a lot. Other than UConn and Purdue, which I think UConn has 1 loss or 2 losses, and Purdue has 2 losses. Other than those top 2 teams, last night North Carolina just lost to Clemson by 4, 80-76. Like, do you think the competition is just getting like? Remember, when Zion came out, we had like the dominant teams. Even Zion lost that thing, but before that, it was like Kentucky, it was North Carolina, it was Duke,
the blue.
And yeah, it was all the dominant teams, and you always knew there was a dominant team, dominant 2 or 3 teams in the league. Even when it's Gonzaga, Gonzaga's not even like a top 25. So, like, do you think it's like the different players now that are coming out are much better, and no matter where they go, it's more competition? Or do you just think it's just like a coincidence? Like, what are your thoughts on like how competitive? I believe like the top teams have only won like 574% of the time. They're like, it's like 57 and 38. The records of the top teams over other non-conference, non-ranked teams or lower ranked teams. So what are your thoughts on just the way college basketball is going so far?
Well, look, I'll be honest with you. I don't really start paying real attention to college basketball until Selection Sunday, and I have some money on it. So I'm not going to tell you that I've been completely focused in. I'm a St. John's alum, so I'm kind of dialed in with them. UConn, I'm always kind of paying attention to based on their history and their coach. So I think that probably it's a little cyclical that it kind of goes in these. But I also think that the NIL stuff has to be having an impact on this. So I think that there's more parity now. And I think that this is probably the way it's going to be for a little while. Maybe it gets back to, if the real blue bloods start having multiple down, maybe they're going to invest more heavily to make sure that the best players go there, and there'll be some pushback that way. But it feels like for a little while now, it's kind of been trending in this direction, much more parity and much more wide open.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great for basketball because it's like no matter what, now we know, and if it goes to March Madness in the brackets, any team can beat anyone. So there's going to be multiple upsets now than ever. Last year we saw a lot of upsets, but this year it's going to be ridiculous because there's going to be a lot more teams that are in it, especially like Texas Tech. They gave a great move push last night against Baylor. Baylor just barely won. They came back from down like 13 with like 3 minutes to go, and Texas Tech cut it to like 4. But then Baylor pulled it off at the end. I just think, like, for me, I'm a Kentucky Wildcats fan. My co-host Matt, he's actually at St. John's. He's the one of the managers for Rick Pitino. Okay. So so I'm focused also on St. John's as well. I go for them all the time. I just think St. John's, they have it. They're just like the losses that they've had have been like very close losses of like missed free throws, missed basket, not good defense at the end.
Right.
Maybe
little
things. Yeah, exactly. And those little things could maybe have 4 more wins instead of having them. I believe they have 8, 9 losses. I believe St. John's has.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and out of those things, there was like 4 times where they since December that they've had like close games where they just made mistakes at the end. That's now, instead of 8 losses, you have 4 or maybe 5, and now you're in the top 25. You're going to be able to play against those top teams and really show your talent. For me, I just think St. John's is there. I just think that they just need to clean up those little things, and maybe if not this year, which they already have 8 to 9 losses, I mean, it's going to be hard for them to like push into the tournament or at least make it far. But if they get a shot, I think they have a shot of beating whoever. I mean, they played well against UConn over the weekend. I just think that they just didn't have the firepower, or for some reason wasn't consistently shooting great from 3 that game, if I'm not mistaken. But for my Kentucky Wildcats, I don't know, because we play great and our defense is terrible. Like, our offense last night, we scored 109 points, but we gave up almost 80 points to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt is terrible. So I don't know how that's I think that's the youth. I mean, we're very young. I think we're one of the youngest teams in the league. And we have a guy that's Rob Dillingham is coming off the bench, and he's had 3 straight games of 20 plus points off the bench. So I don't know what Kentucky is right now. They're a good team. I don't know if they're a great team, and I don't know if they're just a pretending team, because we play great against a team and then we'll lose against an unranked team that has no business in beating us. So I don't know. I know you haven't watched. You don't really watch it until like it gets to the thing.
I'm not watching Kentucky on a Saturday. I got to be honest.
But yeah, that's just my take on Kentucky. St. John's. What's your take on St. John's? Since I kind of said some things,
Well,
but
look, I just feels like with St. John's, you felt like this year was going to be different because you're bringing in, Rick Pitino and the legend and his resume and everything else. And it feels like every year when you hear about St. John's, it's going into the season, there's optimism. They'll do some things early on in the season that makes you start to really buy in. But then by the time you get to around this time of the year, they have there's a disappointing loss here. And then they fall flat at the end. So I hope that that's not going to be the case this year. I expect more. And look, there's a ticking clock. I don't know how long Rick Pitino is going to do this. So it's about win. They are very much win now. So any little blips or any little painful losses that they're suffering, it's not like they're a team that's building a program for 3 years from now. It's be win now time. And look, they've been good. I don't blame them for the loss to UConn. I mean, it's UConn, but you keep yourself in a position where you need to beat UConn all of a sudden. So I'll be honest, I'm a little leery because it feels like I've seen this movie before, even though it's different actors in the main roles.
Gotcha. And for the last thing, I just want to. You're a Giants fan, right?
No, I'm a Dolphins fan.
Oh, you are a Dolphins fan. Okay. I don't know. I forget. There was a couple people in our class that were Giants fans, but could you talk a little bit about the Giants? Because just in case of in general, a lot of questions. I believe a lot of questions for that whole NFC East. All the 4 teams, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Commanders. I think the Commanders are actually doing much better than all of the teams. They reamped. They got their head coach. They got their offensive coordinator. We also lost our cornerbacks coach, which is that dude that really, he didn't do that good of a job against Green Bay, but
no one did.
But over the course of the year, he was able to get that squad, especially losing Trayvon Diggs. So in the NFC East, this will be our last segment. I just remembered it off the top. What team do you think, for the Giants' perspective, do you think Saquon is going to stay there? Or do you think that the Giants will move off? Because he wants to be a Giant for life, he said. And I love Saquon. Right. I'm not a Giants fan, of course. I hate the Giants, but I love Saquon. And I would take him in a heartbeat. But what are your thoughts on Saquon? Do you think he'll stick it out, or do you think if the money goes, and he's out of there?
I think that they tried this last year. They were in the same spot last year. They weren't going to give him a long-term contract last year. I don't see why you would give him a long-term contract coming off of last year. He was hurt again, didn't have 1,000 yards, was good when he played, but didn't play enough. Running back position, we've gone through that 1,000 times. It's just not as important as it used to be. And I think for Saquon, and I understand it, he's been a good player. He's been a good teammate. He's been a good face for the organization. He wants to get paid. And I just don't think that he's a luxury. And he's a luxury the Giants can't afford. They couldn't afford him when he was the second pick in the draft. It was the wrong pick back then, even though he's a good player. And I don't think that they can afford to be paying him $12 million a year or something along those lines when, let's be honest, they need everything on offense. Outside of left tackle, they got to fix the offensive line. Their quarterback, who they're now kind of stuck with in Daniel Jones, I don't know what they're doing. What's the long-term solution there? Because if you're into year 3 and you're not drafting a quarterback this year, what you're saying is Daniel Jones is our long-term solution. I don't know if that's the right answer. I like some of the receivers that they have, but they're kind of missing that one true A. I mean, Jalen Hyatt had some nice moments. Wan'Dale Robinson's had some okay moments. But, they kind of need everything on offense. You need everything on offense. I don't think that sinking $12 million into a running back who's playing behind a bad offensive line, who's injury prone, who's another year older, is the right way to go. And I get it for Saquon's point of view. He wants to get money. I think that's probably – I think there's going to be a divorce. I think it's best for Saquon. I think it's best for the Giants. And I don't remember the specific stat, but it's like the last 15 Super Bowl winners, the lead running back on those teams have been making an average of about $1 million. Jeez. NFL teams don't spend money on the running back position because you can find guys in the second round, the third round, the fourth round, slot them in there, run them into the ground for 5 years, and then you start the process over again. And there's only 3 running backs in the entire sport who are making more than $12 million. One of them is Christian McCaffrey, and he's brilliant. But I don't think the Saquon Barkley is Christian McCaffrey, even though McCaffrey was hurt a lot when he was with Carolina. The best thing that ever happened to McCaffrey was getting out of Carolina. And I think that maybe the best thing for Saquon would be to get off the Giants.
Okay. And then if I want to just ask, what is your, because I'm a Cowboys fan, of course. So what do you think the Cowboys need to do? Because I keep relaying this thing. Well, I wasn't alive when we won the last Super Bowl,
right?
But it's been 29 years.
Yeah.
So this is the 29th season that we haven't done nothing. So what do you think the Cowboys need to do other than just playing consistent and stop messing up when you need to play great? I don't understand. Like what do I'm like out of like options?
Yeah, I think they made a mistake by bringing back the coach. To be quite honest with you, I know it's good to have a good record every year, and you're in the mix every year. And there is something to be said for that. There was a time where the Chargers were that kind of team where they'd win, 10, 11 games behind Marty Schottenheimer was their coach, but they'd get into the playoffs and then they'd crap out in the first round and have all these terrible losses. And the idea was, well, they fired Marty Schottenheimer, they brought in Norv Turner, and they never got to those same heights. But I think at some point, it's not about just being good every single year. It's about trying to be great one year. And to me, it was a mistake to bring back. I thought the perfect spot was to bring in Bill Belichick, let him run wild with that defense. Let his Josh McDaniels, bring him in as the offensive coordinator because he's not getting another head coaching job. Let him, tinker with the offense and maybe and go all in. Be all in because you talk about not buying green bananas. How old is Jerry Jones? 81, 82? I mean,
yeah,
how many more how many kicks at the can is he going to get here? So
it feels him. Like that's him.
Yeah. It's clearly him. And look, they put a good product on the field. They're a good team, but I think that Jerry Jones is a little too he's got rabbit ears. So, when everybody's saying one thing, he doesn't want to do what everybody, with Jason Garrett every year, people think, oh, they're going to finally fire Jason Garrett. He's going to fire Jason Garrett. And he would never do it. And then eventually he did because it was clear that he was not going to be the guy to get them over the hump. And now it's clear that it seems pretty clear that the coach is not the right coach in Mike McCarthy. But, they're sticking with him. They're running it back for another year. They'll give it another shot. And I think, they put themselves in a position now that if they were ever to get off to a rocky start, if they have a bad loss at the beginning of the season, all the conversation is going to be, is Mike McCarthy on the hot seat? Is Mike McCarthy going to get fired? When is Mike McCarthy going to get fired? And there's only one way for them to have success, and it is not to win a playoff game or to get to a conference championship or to get to a Super Bowl. It is to win a Super Bowl. And I don't know that Mike McCarthy is the right guy to get you there.
I was trying to say that the whole thing, if we do not fire Mike McCarthy, we're going to have a problem. And even if Bill Belichick's out there, Mike Vrabel's out there, Ron Rivera's out there, any of those three options are so much better than Mike McCarthy. Any of them. But of course, Bill Belichick would have been great. And I just think Jerry Jones does not want to work, even though he says we're good friends. We would work together. Right. But I'm like, dude, if that was the case, then why didn't you just pick him? Like, I don't understand why we're going to go through this train wreck of just like, all right, well, yeah, we're friends, but I didn't want to take him. But they didn't extend Mike McCarthy's contract, and I'm thinking if we don't do good this year, the 30th season of us being terrible, we would probably maybe try to go sign him the following year. But that's if we have a shot, because there might be teams that just do really bad that are expected to do really good with a much better roster, much better quarterback than we have. Let's say in a Cincinnati Bengals, if they have another season where they're just Joe Burrow gets hurt again, or they just never get back to where they were the year before he got hurt, maybe he gets there. That's a much better team to go to. You have an offense, you have a Joe Burrow, you have the wide receivers, you have much better than Dak Prescott. I'm sorry, but Dak Prescott is not better than Joe Burrow. Not even close. So I just think that there'll be more options next year than this year, and I think we're just squandering that opportunity. Now we got to find a defensive coordinator. I don't think Bill Belichick will come as a defensive coordinator. Yeah. Don't even think that's not even close. Yeah. I don't think
Mike McCarthy would want him looking over his shoulders. The defense.
Exactly. I think they would just switch roles if that was the case. They might mid-season. And then Mike Vrabel, I don't think he wants to be a defensive coordinator. The only person that maybe would be Ron Rivera, but he's older. I don't know if he wants to do
No,
all
look,
that.
he would be a perfect guy because he's not going to get another head coaching job. When he does work on just the defense, he's great.
Okay, so then, yeah,
I would say if they could sign him now, I don't know what his style of defense is, and in relation to what your defense was this year, and I'm sure there'd be some change in philosophy there or whatnot. But to me, go out and hire the veteran defensive coordinator who's already had a chance, and he's had a couple of chances to be a head coach. He's not going to get another chance to be a head coach. So then he's there for the long haul. But it might be the type of thing for Ron Rivera. He's probably still getting paid from Washington.
Yeah.
If you want to take a job in Dallas where it's a very good possibility that it's going to be for a year and then they're going to blow up the whole thing anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But
you want to spend your life and move there, move your family,
exactly.
do all this stuff just for 1 year.
I have a question. So the last thing, they said that Mike Zimmer and Rex Ryan, what are your thoughts on them being the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys? You think that any of them could make a difference? Because I know Mike Zimmer was on the Cowboys from 1994 to 2006, I believe, as one of the assistants or one of the coaches on the team. And then, so he kind of knows the team. He's been there before. Then Rex Ryan, we know what his defense did or tried to in the stopping of Tom Brady and all those type of games. So do you think any of those guys would be a good fit?
I think Rex would probably jump at the chance if he got the chance. I don't know.
We are actually giving him an interview, actually. That's what came
I think
up.
he would jump at the chance to have that kind of defense and that kind of talent and be back in coach. I mean, I think Rex would love to be a head coach again. He's had 2 cracks at it. The first one went pretty well. The second one, not so much. So I'm sure he'd love to be able to throw his hat back in the ring, and any opportunity he got, I think he would probably take. I mean, Mike Zimmer to me is like the perfect kind of option, right? Veteran guy. He's had his head coaching chances. He's probably not going to get another one. His type of defense is going to get after you. He's really good at cooking up schemes, and he'll be there for the long haul. I don't know if there's going to be a long haul though for Dallas. Like it might be a thing where next year that everybody gets blown out, so that might not appeal to somebody who's looking for that. Maybe if you're Mike Zimmer, I don't know what age Mike Zimmer is, but I'm sure he wants to be someplace for a few years. He doesn't want to just go someplace for 1 year and then be doing it all over again.
Yeah. Okay. And then just the Eagles, just a quick one with the Eagles. I know we talked a little bit in the beginning about the Commanders. I mean, they're doing their thing. I just think that they have to find either the right quarterback or maybe just stick with Sam Howell. But for the Eagles, they had a pretty crappy year. They started the year, I believe it was 10-1 or something like that, and then they just were abysmal for the rest of the year. Do you think this is the last year for Nick Sirianni and then he's gone, or do you think it's a quarterback thing? Do you think it's like, what do you think with the Eagles?
I think that it seemed like they just got old at certain positions, and I don't know for the first half of the season when they were 10-1, we all kind of felt like, yeah, they're 10-1, but they're not as good as that 10-1 record. But they know how to win games. They're finding ways to win games. And then something happened. I don't know what happened. If it's something in the locker room, I don't know if it's a coaching thing. I don't know what it was, but something clearly changed in that second half of the year. Maybe it was guys just getting older. Maybe it was the result of some injuries that just kind of pile up. But they were a mess down the stretch. Now, I would have given Sirianni another year because it was one bad year. They were in the Super Bowl a year ago. But Howie Roseman is the guy that runs that organization, so it would not surprise me at all if they have a mediocre year next year, that Sirianni is out and they'll bring somebody else in.
Gotcha. Okay, and then just the Commanders. What are your thoughts on the Commanders with the firing Ron Rivera and the Dan Quinn thing? Because
they got a fresh start now. I mean, they had the worst owner probably in all of sports in Dan Snyder, and now they have a new ownership group. It's not a great look for them, though, that their number one target was Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Lions, and the reports are that Ben Johnson was not impressed with the ownership group, felt like they were NBA guys. They didn't really understand the NFL. So that's not great. I don't think it's clearly not the sexiest hiring in Dan Quinn. But he's a guy that people think highly of. They're starting over. Starting from scratch, and hopefully now they have the second pick in the draft, and they can nail the quarterback and go on from there.
So you think Sam Howell's not the quarterback?
Correct? No, he's not. I don't. I mean, you have the second pick in the draft. I think you got to find out the long-term solution. I don't think Sam Howell really showed. I mean, he showed you little blips here and there, but I don't think. If you have the second pick in a draft and a really good quarterback draft, and there's a guy that you love there, you got to take that guy.
I got
So
you.
if they love Drake May, if they love Jaden Daniels, if they love one of these other guys that they can get maybe later on, or JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix, you gotta figure that out. When you get to be up there, there's two ways of building a team. You can either get the quarterback and then fill the team in around them, or you can fill the team around and then hopefully find the quarterback somewhere down the road. Sometimes that works out. The Lions, they built up the team and they found the quarterback in Jared Goff. He wasn't their first choice, but it turned out he was good enough. But is he good enough to win you a Super Bowl? That's the position you find yourself in. You could be really good, but with an okay quarterback. I think that when you are drafting second overall, if there's a quarterback you love, you don't waste.
You don't pass out.
Go get that guy.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Professor, I really appreciate you coming on for the podcast. That's pretty much it, guys, here on the Fire Sports Pod. I'm your host, Zach Jackson. This is my professor from ESPN. Does a lot of his work, and I really appreciate what he's done in helping me kind of succeed in this, because without your class, I don't know, because I was kind of, in the beginning, I was like kind of a little like on the edge of like able to do it, whatever. And actually right after our class, I started the podcast. So really your class helped me out, and especially being able to like this type of thing. I was never able to do that. So I really appreciate that. And we'll be contacted soon. So I'm just going to end this, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my show. Don't forget my Apple Podcast audio show is coming on right after this. After I post this, you guys should definitely check that out. But that's it, guys. And I'll see you guys on Friday for another show on the YouTube show on the Fire Sports Side. Peace out.